Hi, everybody, and welcome to the lighting effects video tutorial that's part of the Instagram unit. So today we're going to talk about two different kind of lighting effects. The general lighting effects option and then also the lens flare. So let's go ahead and get started by opening up a photo of your choosing. I don't care which photo, any photo is fine. Remember, if you need to use one of mine, you can go to File, Open. If you go to the Courses folder, there is a folder in here called Digital Image Archive, and I have folders here full of thousands of photos. So again, if you need a photo to borrow, any of these is fine. You can open them up, don't care, and open up a photo. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go up to Filter, Render, and then we're going to start first with the general lighting effect. So that's the last one in the list. So now depending on whatever colors were last used, so you can see here, I've got some kind of funky colors going on. That's because the last time I was at this computer station, I somehow set these colors in here. So you need to know that it does change. So here's how we're going to reset to a general natural spotlight. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to set white on white. Okay, so that's just showing you if it happens to come up with a weird color, you're like, what is going on? Okay, so we're just gonna talk about the spot. You can play with point and infinite up here in the top right if you want to, but we're gonna just stick with general spot. Infinite point are the ones that if you're having computer tech issues with the vid card that you need for these rendering, that's where you're probably gonna run into your problems. So with this video, at any time, if you run into tech issues where it just is not working, a dialog box isn't popping up, like for instance, if this already isn't, it's probably because there's something wrong with the video card that's used for 3D animation, which it sounds odd, but this effect, this lighting effect, is a 3D animation effect. So if you have problems, don't worry, don't freak out, just let me know. Okay, so the spotlight works just like it sounds. It's a general spotlight. You can move and change the shape of this. So you can make it a general circle. You can make it big, like a big spotlight, small spotlight. You can stretch and pull it. So you can change where that is. You can change where, oops, let me grab, rotate it. In here, I can move and change how bright or intense it is. I'm clicking on the dial here. Trying to grab the inside here. Here we go. There we go. I got it, the inside. So you can change the direct center of that hotspot. Personally, I like the spotlights that are just a little bit, they're a hint, they're not overdone. So you can kind of play around with that. Also, sometimes these dials are a little tricky for people, especially dealing with the intensities. You can do that over here. So notice I've got the intensity slider here. That's the inside, or sorry, the general outside. Then your hotspot, I can move it how big or small. So if you're having a hard time with those dials, that works over here. All right, so now changing the color. So let's say I don't want this just a basic bright white light. I can change it. So this is again where I can do something kind of funky. If I want to change the colors, notice it changes the colors of everything. So I'm applying blue. It's making my yellow sunflower kind of green because it's optically mixing. I can again change the color of the outside. And then if you want to play around with these, so you'll see where the exposure underneath this section, it's dealing with the outside brightness. So you can see that if I dial it down, the outside gets really dark. If I dial it up, so it's how much it's impacting that center part. The ambiance is kind of the overall brightness, so you can play around with that. Texture really doesn't. I mean, it works, but it just deals with the blending of the outside area. So you can play with that if you want. I'm going to go back to my general colors. I just want a general white. And I'm going to take my intensities down a lot. And then I'm going to click OK. So go ahead and stop the video now if you haven't done that. And you're going to apply a spotlight effect. All right, now that you've applied your spotlight effect, we're going to put a lens flare. So with both of these effects, both the lighting, the spotlight effect, and the lens flare, I like to say that they're a lot like the glitter of the computer graphics world. So glitter in the upstairs art room is one of those things that's a little overused. It's a little most artists kind of have an eye roll when they see it because a novice will overuse it. It's not really considered a traditional art media. But you know what? A lot of us love them and they're fun, but it can become obnoxious really fast. Lighting effects and lens flares are the same thing. Because they're so cool, everybody wants to use them on everything. So I'll just say this: take all of this with a grain of salt. You want to use them, but you want to use them sporadically, just when they're necessary. Don't overuse them just to be using them. Okay. Having said that, now let's go ahead and introduce you to the lens flare because you're all going to love it. So let's go to Filter, Render, Lens Flare. So there are several different flares. There's 4 different types. So a quick little lesson on what a lens flare is. So, technically speaking, it's actually an imperfection. It's a mistake in photography. What's happening is you have different lenses on a camera, and these are your different lenses. These are 4 traditional. Sorry, there's 3 traditional lenses, and then one what's called movie poster, and I'll show you that in a second. They're different types of lenses. So, what happens is when light comes in through a light source, and usually it's natural lighting with the sun, it happens often with. So this light comes in the lens and it's kind of bouncing around inside the lens and it creates these orbs of light. So again, it's imperfection, but a lot of times when we see them, it adds charm to the photo. So it's hard to get them because you can't, even as a photographer, you can't necessarily even see them while you're taking the photo. It's in the processing or the developing afterwards. It's not until after you snap the photo you see it. It's almost like a ghost. It just kind of shows up in there. All right. Um, so what you're trying to do here with the lens flare filter is you are artificially putting one in there. And it takes some playing around with, but the problem with this is it does not show you a preview option on your larger image. You have to look really small here and on the thumbnail here. So I'm going to take you through these. So there's 4 different types. You've got the 50 to 300 millimeter, and you can, again, you can make it brighter or darker. Um, So that's your basic one. So I'm just going to take you through these for a little bit. Just watch the video and then I'm going to let you play. Going back to that lens flare again. 35 millimeter is the one that most of us are kind of used to, and it will create these orbs that kind of shoot out. So I'll apply that so you can kind of see. So you've got your general orb, but then you've got these other ones here. And I'm going to show you a trick. The 105 millimeter is just a really bold one. It's 35 millimeter, and then the 50 to 300 is probably the one you'll want to use most, because it's just really direct. It does shoot out these little tiny orbs. You can kind of see them down here. And then the last one there is that movie poster, which again, I'm just moving this dot around here. It does these little starburst effects. Okay. So go ahead and stop the video and apply a lens filter. All right, now that you've done that, I want to show you a little trick that I've learned over the years. You do not have to do this, but I do want you to watch because it's my suggestion if you are, in fact, going to use a lens flare because you're just determined to use that computer graphics glitter. That's fine. What I would do is I would make a copy of your background layer and then I would apply the filter to that top layer. And you're going to see why in just a second. So I'm going to put I like 35 millimeter. That's my favorite. Usually speaking, the lens flare happens where your light source is. So if you kind of got to determine where your light source is coming from, or sometimes you'll put it like right to the right or left of your subject matter. Here's why I put it on a copy layer, because then I take the opacity of that layer down, and we'll learn about these later, is because it's going to soften that a little bit and it's going to make it look so it's not so artificial and fake on top. All right. So whether you put it on a background copy or on the regular background layer, that's perfectly fine. We're going to go to File, Save As. I would like you to save this in your computer graphics folder. Oops. Save this in Lessons, and I want you to call this Lighting Effects, and then hit Save. And that's it. You're done. So you've learned general lighting effects as well as that oh so fancy lens flare. Good work.